So you could call this the first official moto vlog. I've been having a few teething issues with the audio, like some interference, like when you go over a certain speed it's a bit windy, like the mic, it keeps crackling at you. So I'm trying out a few different things and what have you. But today, this video is for all of you who are thinking about buying a MT-07, and I'm here to tell you why it's a fucking great idea and you should definitely do it. But at the same time, I'll give you my honest opinion, because as fun as this bike is, it's got its issues. It's definitely on the budget side of things. I think when you get to the MT-09 and MT-10s, that's when you get a bit more premium. But as far as this bike goes, it is very slightly budget, but then it makes up for it in so many other ways. Big tractor. Huge amounts of power, huge torque. It's extremely fun. Yeah, so you've got bundles of torque. You've got more torque than you'd ever really need, or you could never really ask for more. You always want more, but do you need more? Definitely not. Top end is where it really starts to drop off, especially when I'm on it. I'm like I said, 6'5", 100 kg, and yeah, when I'm on it, then that's when it definitely drops off. But yeah, when it's windy as well, with it being a naked bike, and this is just a naked bike trait in it, but you get fucking blasted by the wind. Its best trait is by far the engine. The engine, the power delivery, the sound it makes, the way it feels is all 10 out of 10. And that is really what carries this bike. Being a bit of a budget bike with the way it feels and the materials used and the sort of longevity of it, the engine makes up for it and then some. It's such a nice engine, and we'll get on some bit of a nicer stretch of road in a minute, and I'll open it up a bit. I'm gonna take it right here. I'll open it up a bit now. I'm barely even trying, we're just sitting at 70 really nicely. Fourth gear, open up all the way. Huge amounts of power and torque available. It's kind of one of them bikes where you can just keep it in fourth gear when you're on roads like this. It doesn't really need to be dropped down like this and revved out in third, but you can if you want to. Definitely makes it more enjoyable. Could do with dispatching this guy really, to be honest. Huge amounts of engine braking as well. Coming into corners when you knock it down to third like that. Loads of engine braking. Just drop it down fourth. Open it up and you're going downhill. Keep it in fourth for corners like this. Steady on the power, on the brakes. Chuck it in again. Just keep it in fourth gear, man. She loves it. Hard on the brakes now. Keep it in fourth again, I think. Yep. Steady on the brakes, a bit bumpy. Front wheel lifts up a bit. Into fifth, and we're just open it. Woo! Hard on the brakes. Bounce it over the hill. Back down to fourth gear. Yep. Back at it. Bit of a bumpy section of road here. But this is where this bike excels. It's so fun. I'm going to come into the third and we'll cool it off a little bit. But as you can see, oops, I missed the gear. But yeah, as you can see, you really don't need to be doing suicidal speeds to get the most out of it. You can open it up in third, fourth, all the way. You can bounce it off the limiter. You're not doing like 140, in third gear. No, in third gear you're doing like 100 miles an hour, bouncing off the limiter. and the enjoyment you get. It's kind of like when you get, it's kind of like if you had nice cars before and you go from like a nice car to a bit of a shitty beta car. In some ways it's more fun because you just rag it around, and you know what I mean, bounce it off a limiter, go over fucking potholes as quick as you want. Go on, go over potholes as quick as you want. And in some ways you have more fun with it, but I mean, and then on the back of that you still want to have your nice cars and that. Don't get me wrong, this isn't a beta bike, it's a gorgeous looking bike, and if you've got £4 to spare you can get a really good one. Okay, yeah, so we've gone over some of the good things about this bike, and now on to the bad things. And to be honest, it's quite nitpicky. There's nothing like, there's not one big red flag that I would ever say puts you off getting the bike entirely. It's very nitpicky stuff. The biggest one is just the overall build quality and feel. Like, all this is plastic, quite like, especially, I mean, obviously when you're riding it you don't notice it because you're riding the bike, but it's when you have to start doing maintenance on it and taking it apart, you realise it's quite cheaply built. The panels have gaps in, don't really sit flush and all a bit creaky, but at the same time you have to understand it's a cheap bike, so that can be forgiven for that. Another thing is some of the wear and tear. So when you are buying this bike, the big thing to look for is on the swing arm, and I suppose I could pull over somewhere and just give you like an overview of my bike. But a big thing to look for is the swing arm normally has a bit of rust on. That's one thing. And on my bike in particular, I don't know if this is on all of them, bear in mind it's a 2019 bike, is where the key sits there on the ignition, it's properly worn down. It's quite frustrating, I don't know why it's done that. And then the ignition itself is very fiddly. From putting the lock on is very fiddly, to just starting the bike and putting the key on, it's not like a satisfying click. It's a lot of play in there. Can be a bit frustrating sometimes, and it all ties into the overall feel of it being a bit of a budget bike. But then when you get the engine and it does stuff like this, it seriously makes up for it. Another bad thing is the brakes. When I was researching this bike before I bought it, everyone said the brakes are really bad. And obviously when you first get on this and you've got nothing to compare it to, you don't really think much of it. But then when you get on the bike and you can feel what a good set of brakes is like, then yeah, you realise that the brakes on this bike are quite shoddy. That's definitely the biggest negative factor in regard to the performance of the bike, because brakes are pretty damn important. The suspension is quite tough. You can feel the bumps, which is to be expected. It's nothing crazy like, but you can definitely feel the bumps. As far as feeling the road, I think it's alright. You get good feedback. I've never had any real complaints of it. And yeah, anything I've just said there about the negative points, it all just dwindles away when you actually get on the thing and just start riding it. It's a great overall experience. Yeah, so for me being 6'5", I had my worries about being able to actually ride it for a long time and be comfortable on it. And I can rest assure you that it's definitely possible to do. It will get uncomfortable after a while, but you can be of a normal size and be uncomfortable on a bike. You know, things like the seats. The seat's very comfortable for me on this bike. My knees are a bit high up, but obviously, you know, I'm quite told it's nothing to do with the bike, it's more just to do with my frame. Something kind of irrelevant, which is, I don't think really means anything on a bike, but the fuel economy is actually quite good. I think I can check what I average when I get out of this traffic. Let's say instant MPG, and my average MPG, after I can't lie, a bit of a hoon, is 53.2 MPG, which is actually pretty damn good. Yeah, so if I was to summarise then, the MT-07, it is effortlessly, beautifully delivered power, a lot of fun, with the only downside being is it's just slightly cheaply made. But it's one of those bikes where the pros definitely outweigh the cons, and if you're like someone like me who's on the big side, I'm 6'5", 100 kilograms, you can still have just as much fun.